Hey guys, welcome back to Magic TV. My name's Craig. It is 9 o'clock on a Saturday, which means it's time for a Talk Magic. And today I've got somebody on the channel who you will have definitely heard of. This is a person who is a massive rising star in this industry. Over the last year or two, they have become a very prolific creator. Their stuff is performed by magicians all over the world. And when you listen to this interview, you will find out that the best is yet to come. There's a lot of things on the horizon. This is a person that personifies creativity, and as well as being a creator, is also a performer and also very, very knowledgeable. And hopefully, we'll be sharing his knowledge right here on Magic TV. I am, of course, talking about the one and only Adam Dadswell. How you doing, Adam? You okay?
I am well. Thank you for that introduction. I'm not sure how much of it's true, but
Well,
thank
it's
you
true.
all the same.
You've come out of nowhere. Let's be honest. And I know we're going to get into this, and you haven't really come out of nowhere because you've been in Magic a long time, but it
Mhm.
feels like you've just kind of exploded on the scene with some very
Yeah,
high profile effects over the last couple of years. Uh,
thank you.
and you've had the backing from some huge dealers. And even though you're not, and we'll get into this, even though you're not kind of working directly with them, you've been working with a lot of big names
Mhm.
in Magic. People like Vanishing Ink have been promoting your stuff. Alakazam have been promoting your stuff. You're pretty much everywhere, and you are in a position that a lot of magicians wish they could be in. A lot of magicians hope to just get one release that they can have their name on that's successful. And it seems that every single effect that you've brought out has been very, very successful. People have been raving about it, and there's very few people that are able to do that. So, first of all, before we go any further, Adam, congratulations.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. Yeah, yeah, I work hard on this stuff, and it's nice to see that people do enjoy it. I mean, the main reason I share it is just because I think it's good. But if obviously other people can get value from it, and that's always a good thing as well. So, yeah, but it's exciting. It's exciting to see some of your ideas. It's quite slightly strange when you see other people performing things you've just done for a while, and yeah, it's nice to finally have some stuff out there and people enjoying it as well, and people saying kind words. So yeah, it's been lovely.
Well, let's get into it, Adam. Let's
Hmm.
get into it. So, for those people who maybe haven't heard of you, they're not aware of
Mhm.
your work, we're going to start at the very beginning and we're going to talk, first of all, about your origin story, how you got into magic, where it all happened. So, when did you find magic?
Yeah, do you know what? I found magic quite late on. So I never had a magic set as a kid, from what I can remember. My parents have still they've never corrected me on that and said, no, you did have one. So I never had a magic set as a kid. It was actually I saw a magician who we would know who performed at I think it was the Magic Cave in Covent Garden. So the little market stall in Covent Garden.
Okay,
And
so that would be Lee Hathaway, maybe?
there you go. So Lee was perform this. So I was 16, 17, and I saw Lee perform. Like he doesn't know, like because I know of Lee, but I don't really know. So he might, if he watches this, then it'd be cool to say hello. But I saw Lee perform, um, and he was just doing some kind of standard bits with like a Svengali deck and some decks of cards and things. And it just, there's something about it. I was watching him again and again. I was thinking, how is that what, like, there must be an answer. Like, I'm quite a logical thinker. So I was, even at that age, I was thinking, for me, it was a puzzle. And I was trying to figure it out. And I ended up chatting to Lee briefly and I bought a couple of tricks and I didn't really think anything of it. I went away, played with it. It was a cool thing to do. And I got a copy of the Royal Road as well. So kind of card magic really became my way in, which is a lot of way in for a lot of people. And it then wasn't really until university that I met a friend who was in our flat who was performing card tricks. And I was thinking, I'm going to dig that stuff out that I had a couple of years back. And I was at Lancaster Uni actually in the northwest of England, and I actually not long after met Sam Fitton, who was also at Lancaster Uni. So me and Sam have been friends forever. He's my longest friend in magic, if you will. And then that's kind of how it all started. And I spent a lot of time with Sam. Sam, shared some words of wisdom. And, Sam had been into magic a lot longer than me since he was a lot younger. And then me and Sam actually ended up doing some gigs together and things like that. And it kind of took off from there, really. Yeah,
Wow.
and yeah, honestly, it was a bit mental. It was a hobby that got completely out of hand. And I didn't know you could perform magic and get paid. I didn't know that was a thing. It was so alien to me. And I was like, but this is fun. Like, this is amazing being able to do this and people, share experiences with people. And then, it became like a thing where, I then got into weddings from there. And I mean, I did like friends' parties and things. And then it became weddings and I did some wedding fairs and, one thing led to another. And yeah.
That's interesting. Okay. And how old were you when you were at university?
So I went to university at 18.
Okay. So, and you're like mid-30s now, right? Or something
Yeah.
like around
Yeah.
about mid-30s. So you were before, yeah, no, there's a reason I ask. I'm piecing it all together. So you were at university, you
Mhm.
were obviously getting into magic, going out and doing some gigs. What kind of was the plan after uni? Because I know
Mm.
you're not a full-time pro, which is amazing. And we'll talk about the creativity in a bit. I know you're
Mm.
a full-time pro, which is amazing because I get a lot of people on here that are full-time pros. And it's
Mhm.
nice to have people that aren't. I love it when I have people that are like semi-pros because I've said over and over again on this channel, when you become a full-time pro and your income completely depends on magic, you start to sacrifice the magic that you do and you start to do stuff that, I don't really want to do another bloody ambitious card, but I know it. Do you know what I mean? So,
Of
like,
course, yeah.
what was what from your point of view was the goal to perform professionally, get a job with it, or was it always going to be kind of a side hustle? What was the plan when you were at uni? And
Um, I think because it was still kind of quite new to me at that point, I don't think it was really. It wasn't one of them where I kind of I had a career plan in front of me for magic. I didn't. I, I saw it as something I could do. I could go out and do gigs and earn a bit of money from. But I was studying. I was studying IT and IT for the creative industries. I think they called the course or something like that. But basically, what it meant was I was doing computer science but also doing business. There was a business element to it as well. Um, and I did a master's in the end in that. And I think really it was it's quite a good industry, technology and business and things like that, and digital products. And I came out of uni and there was a few kind of options for me, if you will, and I felt very fortunate to be in that position. But there was a few options, and I think I always kind of knew I was going to go down that route. I didn't know what exactly I wanted to do in kind of the IT and business space, but it's worlds apart from magic, of course, like absolutely worlds apart. But I kind of went down that route and then continued to perform kind of at weekends and things like that. I also probably just another piece to the puzzle. I played ice hockey since the age of 9, um, and I played junior hockey and things like that, and I played recreational hockey when I came back from university. So there was so I was playing hockey as well. There was loads of things in the mix, which basically meant at some point or another, which we'll get to, which is I basically stopped performing magic, going out and you know trading my time for money to perform. Like that kind of stopped. But then I continued to be a student of magic, as we all are, right? I kind of continued that pathway, just kind of behind closed doors, if you will, a little bit. So,
that's interesting. So when did that happen? Like, and what led you up to that? Because obviously I have people on this channel all the time saying to me, I feel like I'm falling out of love with magic. I
mm,
can't be asked to practice anymore. I don't want to go out and perform. And it's something that happens to a lot of people. And it's like, how do you get your mojo back? You've obviously
yeah.
got your mojo back with the amount of stuff you're releasing, but like what led to the decision of, you know what, I'm making money doing this. I'm good at doing this, especially as you're friends with Sam Fitton, who, let's be honest, has all the gigs. He's
Yeah.
the guy that just, has all the gigs. Like, what made you kind of go, you know what, I'm gonna stop doing this?
Um, I think it's just life. I think life just got a bit too busy. Like there was, it sounds silly because it's such a big part of me now. It feels strange looking back to think that um, it was something that kind of got pushed aside a little bit. Um, but I don't know. It was my early 20s. You know, I was working a full time job in a world where we were commuting all the time. Um, that felt very full on. And then on top of that, I was playing ice hockey, as I've mentioned. Um, there was just a lot going on, and I think it, I felt as though from the spare time that I did have, I didn't really want to then be going out and performing it. And in all honesty, I probably got stuck in a bit of a rut with the kind of stuff I was performing. You know, I was a card magician, but I kind of in the early days, like, and there was like a small period of time when um I basically made it an ambition of mine to join the Magic Circle, right? And that was a thing. I was going to do it. And I did. And I got in at 18, like 18, 19. Um, but at that time, I just wanted to soak up as much as I could. So, you know, I kind of went down to London as much as I could, and I spent time with like Lee Smith, and I met Lee and people like that. And um, it was it was just very full on. But then when what it did mean, I could go out and perform at gigs pretty confidently with like the stuff I was learning and from people around me. But it kind of became a bit samey. I was doing like an ambitious card, 2 card transpo, sponge balls, that kind of stuff. And that was what I was doing. And I don't know, maybe I fell out of love with it a little bit at that time. And because there was so much else going on, it just kind of got put to the side a little bit on the performing side. And then, you know, from there, things just kind of life just happens then, right? So I met at the time, it was obviously my girlfriend, but then it was my wife now. You know, I met her, and then you know, over time, we moved into our own place, and then, you know, we got married, and then we had a little boy, and then like life just happens. And it wasn't actually until, I know we're jumping forward a little bit, and I'm sure you'll rein me back in, but it wasn't actually until nearly at COVID when I, well, we all did, right? We all had this moment to stop and reflect. And I think one of the things that came out of that was, well, what's actually important? And it was at that time that I completely ramped down the coaching ice hockey, because I've not even got to that. I've spent a long time coaching ice hockey as well, um, like coaching kids teams and juniors and stuff like that. And it was very time consuming, and I was traveling a lot because it's a minority sport in the UK. You have to travel around to do it. Um, and I always knew I was going to step away to try and get the balance right with family and things like that. Um, and yeah, it was a proper reflection point, COVID, and that was a point where I was like, after all of that, I was still like, I had an itch, and I was like, I want to do something for me. Um,
But when you stepped away from it, were you kind
mm,
of like, did you kind of put your props away? Were you just like a complete break? Were you still kind of practicing
well,
yourself, but
yeah.
just
So
yourself, or
for
were you actively like buying tricks or watching lectures?
Um, for a little bit, I kind of just put the cards down. But then every so often I'd pick them up and I'd have a little play, and then put them back, and then have a play. And then there was a period of time though where I can kind of just completely I just stopped going on the Green Monster. I stopped going on there. I stopped buying stuff. I don't know, like life just, it kind of just happened, right? And I kind of stepped away a little bit. But I always had little ideas with when I was playing around with like specifically cards. Like that was my thing at the time. And like in amongst, at some point, I put out a PDF with Jamie Dawes on a thing I'd played around with in the early days called Shootout. It's like an animated deck thing. So there was always little ideas that I had, and I did make notes, and I had notebooks and things. Um, and I just put them back on the shelf, and that was it. It wasn't until much later um, that I kind of got back into performing, and you know, we can go into that in a minute. But yeah, it's been weird. Like I've always been studying it. I've always been studying it, and I've appreciated things, and I've always watch things and stuff like that. But for the most part, there was breaks. There was times when I just put the props down. I just had that break.
Okay, that's really interesting. So, what advice would you give anybody that's watching this video that's kind of going through the same sort of thing? They're kind of in a situation where they're like, I love magic, but I'm kind of just going through the motions. I don't particularly want to practice. I have to force myself to pick up a deck of cards. I don't want to stop doing it, but I don't feel like I'm getting enjoyment out of it. What advice would you give somebody?
Um, well, first of all, I'd say that's okay. That's a perfectly normal feeling to have. I think. Where does my head go on that? I think that one of the reasons that I enjoy doing what I do now is because I'm being authentic to who I am. So I'm sharing the things that I enjoy to do in magic, right? I think that took me a while to figure out what that is, and that's constantly evolving, right? That's constantly evolving. So, in 2 years' time, I might be exploring something else, and that's fine. But right now, I'm sharing the things that I enjoy performing, and I think are just an extension of who I am, right? Genuinely.
Yeah.
So I think I would say maybe have a think about who you are as a performer. Who do you want to be as a performer? Do the things you're doing kind of work into that view, whatever that is? Because sometimes it might be the fact that you're just doing a trick because you know the trick. It's like, is that really what you want to share with your audiences? You don't have to share that with your audiences. But equally, like, and probably not the answer people are expecting right now, it's okay to sometimes just put the cards down. That's fine as well, and just take some time for yourself. I don't know. Yeah, I think that's what
Yeah.
I would say. I wouldn't force anyone to say, no, no, you need to keep performing. Obviously, magic is a wonderful art form, and I absolutely love it to bits. But if somebody's falling out of love with it, or someone's stuck in a bit of a rut, it's okay to kind of just take a breath as well. Yeah.
Really good advice. Really good advice. So actually, one more question. So
Hmm.
before you took your break,
Yeah.
were you creating magic? Because obviously we're going to talk in a bit how you kind of burst on the scene out of nowhere. But like I've never seen anything from you in the early days. Were you creating magic or was it really more of just a performance thing?
More so the performance. I think there was, like I said, there was a PDF that I put out with Jamie because I spoke a lot to Jamie Dawes in the early days. That was kind of one of the people that I'd kind of met, um and I had ideas all the time. And of course, having friends that I'd met in those early days, such as Sam, such as Jamie, such as Lee Smith, these guys were, like, in my mind, like leaps ahead of where my head was at with magic. I was really blessed to be kind of in the presence of these guys, really, in terms of their thinking. So spending a lot of time with Sam. Sam's a very creative guy. He's a great thinker, a deep thinker around magic and routining and effects, and working with audiences, as we well know. So naturally, I had ideas. Um, but not to the point where I'd think, oh, I want to release something. I didn't. It sounds weird saying I didn't. Not that I do now. I was going to say I didn't feel qualified, but I don't feel qualified now. I didn't feel like that was something I would do. I don't know. It's yeah.
Yeah, I understand. So, so when you decided to come back to magic, you kind of at the start of lockdown, you decided to come back to magic, you're kind of reevaluating stuff.
Mm.
Two questions initially. Was the goal to just like start practicing again and start taking it up as a hobby, or was the plan to actually become a performer again and start making money from it? And you said something had to go, which is why the magic had to go. Did the ice hockey coaching go at that point? Was it kind of like, okay, well, this is what I want to do instead? And it sounds like you're passionate about both magic and ice hockey.
Mm.
If ice hockey did go, what kind of made you kind of go, well, you know what, I'm actually going to choose this over this now?
Yeah. So I guess to give some context as to how I ended up getting back into it. So um, by the time by the time lockdown happened, we just moved house like a couple of weeks. It was very stressful, as you can imagine. But we just moved house, and we're in the new house, and it was it was actually then as we started to come out of lockdown. I mean, my little boy now, well, our little boy, sorry, he's 5, so he's still a very young family, and at the time he was a baby, and kind of locked down with a baby. That was fun.
Oh God, it was
No,
bad
like
enough for me having. Look, oh God, I can only imagine
no, but
stuck in a
genuinely,
house with a baby and not being able to leave. Oh my God, yeah.
but well, I mean, the props go to my wife, to be fair. But the point was like out towards the end of lockdown, um, there was a local bar and coffee shop opening up, like in our area, and we got chatting to the new owners, and it was a startup business. It was their first business, and I think at the same time I started to think about kind of maybe I should get back out there and maybe do a few gigs. Um, and um, I spoke to those guys about entertainment. What kind of entertainment are you thinking of doing? Obviously, there's restrictions in place, and they spoke about trying to do something a bit different. So, what actually ended up happening was my introduction back into magic was performing a parlor show for 30 people for about 4 or 5 months back to back. We sold out every show, so that was good.
Wow.
Um, where tables, like everyone had to sit on tables with people they like family members,
Yeah,
and
'cause it was bubbles and stuff back
yeah, it
then,
was
wasn't it? Yeah.
all weird. But it was really at that time when I'd always had an affection for mentalism, and I'd thought more around mentalism. Um, and it was really that time when that was the first time I was properly sharing mentalism type effects with an audience. And yeah, that's the thing that kind of kicked off then. And I ended up doing my first wedding back like not long after that, and then I was back in touch with Sam as well, and Sam would refer me a couple of gigs, and we kind of got going from there. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Is this about the same time that you started performing at the Oracle Bar as well?
Yeah, so not long after I'd done a couple of those shows, I think I followed them on Instagram or something, and I think I just reached out to them. I was like, hey, like we're in the same city. Like I'd love to come and chat anyway, and introduce myself. And um Ben and Terry, the guys who own it, they invited me down for a bit of a chat. I performed a few things for them, and they were like, yeah, do you want to come and do some shifts? So it was kind of that quick, and we hit it off, and I kind of went in there and did a few shifts, and we that ended up being quite a regular thing actually. And then there was a period for about a year and a half where I worked at the Oracle pretty much every week on a Saturday evening. Well, mostly every week. But actually, that was a real good way to get my flight time back up. But also, it was where I met a bunch of magicians, and ended up in a bit of a network of magicians again, which I'd not had for these kind of years gone by, right? And that's where I met Lewis Laval, who actually in turn that's what ended up getting me onto the releasing stuff, which we can go to. Yeah.
Well, I mean, let's talk about that because at no point up until this point have you mentioned creativity or creating magic or anything. That's kind of what a lot of people know you for.
Yeah.
So Lewis was the catalyst for this. Was he working at the 1914 at the time, or was it Minehouse?
Yeah. So Lewis was still working with the guys at the 1914, and we would meet. We actually, it was weird. We lived really close to each other. I'm talking about 5 minutes in the car. So we would often have the car journeys to and from the Oracle, just chatting, and we would share ideas and chat magic and all this kind of stuff. And I think when we went out for coffee one time, I was showing him some of my card stuff. Essentially, that's what it was. It was card magic, but with like a mental feel to it. And Lewis just asked the question, which is, have you ever thought about releasing some of this stuff? Because this is obviously your thoughts and ideas on some of the older plots, but also there's some kind of original stuff in there. Would you ever consider putting it out? Because I think this would be a great thing to share. And that really was the start of the conversations then with Dee and Jack at the 1914 and around some project ideas that we could potentially work on. And yeah, then obviously kind of that started to happen. And then the first offering to the Magic community was Perplexions, which was a download with the 1914, which was essentially mentalism with playing cards. And I think the idea there was we've got an audience of mentalists that we could maybe encourage to use playing cards, but maybe it's a good in for magicians as well who might want to give mentalism a go. And yeah, so that was like and that was where that I remember that was October 22, I think, was when that was put out because I think we filmed some of it in the summer. It was like a bit of a whirlwind, to be honest. And
Yeah, I mean that must have been a big deal for you, like bringing something out with the 1914.
yeah, it was a bit mad. Yeah, and I think at that point, like I don't know, I think I'm quite a I think quite a balanced thinker and things like that. But at that time, I did start to think like I had imposter syndrome. I was thinking like, why would anybody want to like learn stuff that I've come up with? It was a really weird feeling. I was thinking like, why would I? But then it was really strange to like be told by D like some of the people who had downloaded the project and had watched it and things like. And I was just thinking like, this is mental, genuinely mental. Like, I'm not going to say who, but like there's people who watched it, and it was just it was a very very surreal feeling. But there was something else at the time of that being released. Like my kind of great creative juices had got flowing then, and I was always making notes on the fly, and I was looking back at old stuff that I'd written. And actually, when that was released, Lexicon, which then became a Mindhouse release with Lewis, that was already like I was already performing that kind of stuff in the Oracle, and that became a bit of a testing bed then for new material and stuff like that. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So, you've kind of come out of nowhere as a creator.
Yeah.
You brought a download out through the 1914. You brought a download out through Minehouse.
Yeah.
But the two big things that we know you for at the moment, and I know you've got other stuff coming up, but I think it's fair to say that the two big things that we know you for at the moment are Gradients
Hmm.
and Loki.
Yeah.
So my question is, your first physical product, I think, was Gradients.
Yes. Yeah.
So you self-produced that. A lot of
Yeah.
people think that Vanishing Ink did, but they didn't.
No.
You supplied. They wholesaled it.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
It wasn't a Vanishing Ink product. It was a Adam Dadswell product.
Hmm.
That's very unusual in the Magic community because with your first physical product, there's so much that you have to think about. Prototyping can cost money, packaging can cost money.
Yeah,
There's a
it does.
lot of costs that are associated, more than anybody could ever imagine.
For
And then
sure.
the cost of doing the tutorial, the trailer. And I've been on very, very open about this subject. I will never self-produce a product in my life
Mm.
because I can't be asked with it. It's like I don't want that crap. I want to be able to go to a magic company and go, here's the idea, here's the prototype. Call me back when you've made it. I'll do a tutorial and trailer. Call me back when it's ready to release, and I'll
Yeah.
hype the ever-loving shit out of it. Outside of that, I don't want to know. I don't need that crap. Like, and most people, even if they do eventually go on, like and start their own production company or they start producing things themselves, they normally have their first few releases, physical releases,
Hmm.
through a magic shop. That's not the case with you. You just jumped in feet first. With like, what was the reason behind that, if you don't mind me asking? Because Gradient's a good trick. You could have probably sold it to anybody. Like,
Yeah.
what was the reason?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's probably because of um my connections to that point that I thought it was doable. So I'd spoke to Lewis a lot about, and don't forget, like Lewis had served his time in the game, like a long time by this point, right? He'd put a lot of material out, like way before the 1914. Lewis had put a lot of material out to the industry, um, and just kind of in and amongst those conversations, we talked about because he had the Orphic wallet produced, which which is a lot of back and forth for the 1914, I believe. to get it to where it was. And I think you were on the tutorial, weren't you, actually?
Yeah.
And, just kind of, I think it's a bit of a weird one. Like, I didn't really overthink it too much. And the other thing I would say is, like, and just be to completely transparent, like my main source of income is not magic. I think we've kind of touched on that, but that also probably put me in a position where I could self-fund some of this stuff. And in the early days, Gradient was again this kind of idea of looking at. I did mention something to D. Christopher around like because he had the Eclipse cards, which I thought were brilliant, and he was looking at alternatives like what. And then there was a trick as well called Impossible, I think, which was like a bunch of just really neon color cards, which I thought I liked the idea of it, but it looked a bit mad. And then, to be honest, but it was a fantastic trick. But there was conversations with continued with like Sam Fitton and Chris Rawlins. By that point, I'd met Chris through Sam because Chris and Sam have known each other for years, and those guys like fed in like a bunch of really, really good feedback to like what it was. Like you should see some of the early prototypes of what Gradient was. It's embarrassing. But I'm glad I went through that process, right? Like, I thought I had an idea and, we took it, essentially went out onto the balcony, got beaten over the head with a baseball bat, and then we came back in and ripped it apart. And, a lot of the influences to what Gradient has become is because of, I suppose, sharing my ideas and some of those early things with some good thinkers really to kind of hold me accountable and say well, what is this thing like, what really is it? And there was some really good feedback from people like Sam and Chris, and there was a few other people that fed into that, and Lewis and Ben from the Oracle and people like that. And yeah, I mean, I essentially managed to find a contact who could do this stuff for me, and and I had Lewis that shot the tutorial and everything for me, and I had people around me that I could lean on essentially. I mean, I had no idea about wholesaling. I didn't know. I just thought I'll get some done and I'll just sell them myself for a bit, and and then but mate, it's bonkers. Like it's very risky what I did. Like I'll be honest.
Yeah. And
And
because you also didn't put it through Murphy's Magic.
no, I don't know what I'm doing, mate.
So, like, you just went, rather than going through the largest magic wholesaler in the world,
Yeah.
you just contacted Magic Shops Direct and went, hey, fancy
Um,
one of these.
yeah, I think so. I think this is when. So I think Blackpool, not last year, but the year before, I had some like early prototypes of Gradient, and a couple of people saw them. I think it's fair to it'll get touched on. Like I think it's fair to say, like I think Easy Tones was in production at the time as well, which was going to be a Murphy's release. So I also think it probably would never have gone through Murphy's, to be honest. And we can touch on some of that stuff. I think it's been addressed on some stuff in the past, and I know that, like, for what it's worth, like me and Rich are good mates. Like,
Yeah, Rich speaks very highly about you.
I've got all the time in the world for Rich. I think he's an absolute genius, and like anything I share with him, he comes up with something straight away, and I think, why didn't I think this is why you're Rich Relish? And because he's a very, very clever man, and those who haven't seen any of Rich's work, like if you get a chance to see him lecture, like it's just little nugget after little nugget of stuff. Yeah, so I mean, I don't think Gradient probably would have gone the Murphy's route anyway, and that's fine. And I approached Rich at the time and said, I've been playing with this thing, and I think I am going to probably move forward with it to release it. And we had a chat about there probably being room for both of them because they essentially are different props, but they're the same theme, if you will. But yeah, like that happened, and then I was lecturing. I got asked to lecture them because people heard about Perplexions and Mindhouse, and it was when I started lecturing that I first shared my thoughts and ideas around the diabolical principle and how I wanted to share it with the world, which then went on to become Loki, right? And then, that kind of become its own thing, but we can, touch on that.
Wow.
Yeah.
And Gradient's done really well for you.
Say again?
Gradient has done really well for you. Gradient has been a success.
Yeah. Yeah, Gradient's done well, and it's yeah, it's bonkers to like the first batch is officially sold out, like to what I put money into, and I've got some bits next year that'll some additions to Gradient, which I won't say yet, but that's going to be a thing, which is fun. And there's more people coming out of the woodwork with their own ideas with it now, which is super cool. Like as someone who puts something out there, when someone comes back to you and go, "Have you thought of this?" It's slightly annoying because you're like, "Oh, why didn't I think of that?" But at the same time, it's like I would never have thought of that actually, and it's because everyone has different ideas and diversity of thought is great. And when people come back and offer things, it's super super nice.
That's amazing. And then that brings us to Loki, which is a
Yeah,
bit of a weird one because you didn't produce that yourself. And it's
no,
actually gone through a couple of different production companies.
yeah, it's a weird
How does
one.
that
We can
work
talk
out?
about it. um, so what happened? How much can I say? So I was initially um lecturing this as an effect,
Right.
and I again self-produced a small there will be a small handful of people across UK based magic clubs who will have an effect called Three Lock, which was the earliest version of Loki's existence, which is my own self version of it. And then we changed
I
the
think
name.
Matt in my office has got one of those.
He might, yes, actually, he will. Yeah, yeah, and so yeah, it's a bit of a weird one, but essentially, it was always the thing from the lecture that people would keep asking me about and talking about, which was nice, and that's I'd played with that plot for a long time to think about how else can I skin this thing basically, because I don't mind saying the whole principle, like that is foundational to what Loki is the diabolical principle by the amazing Steve Cook. Um, and I spoke to Steve one day and I said, look, I think there's some potential value in this to kind of offering it out to the magic community. Do you mind if I move forward with releasing it? And, fortunately, Steve gave me his blessing and we kind of, it went from there. But that's when I started lecturing it and actually getting some packs made up and things like that. And it was the 1914 did know about it and they D was a fan of it. But then Chris Congreve saw my lecture in flipping, I'm gonna get the wrong place now. Where were we now? Somewhere in the Midlands. It wasn't Wolverhampton either. But Chris came down to the lecture. It might have been Warwick actually, Leamington Spa and Warwick. I think he was
Okay.
down there. Anyway, Chris saw the effect, and Chris really liked it. And it wasn't that long before Blackpool, and we just thought, you know what, should we would you mind, or would you mind maybe going in together on this thing and just seeing if it's got legs, basically. Um, and it did. He had legs, and I showed Jamie Dawes at Blackpool, and then Jamie said, "Harry, you need to see this." And then Harry said, "Dad, you need to see this." So that's when Alakazam became aware of Loki. And yeah, Pete really kindly actually bought a bunch of stock off me and Chris at the time. Um, and then things just moved forward a little bit, and we were potentially going to be wholesaling some stuff to some companies as Loki as it was. Um, but Chris had a load of his own stuff on at the time, and then there was one specific. I don't mind saying this. There was one specific wholesale um, potential thing that was going to happen that then didn't happen, and I knew Pete was a fan of it, so I kind of just spoke to Chris and said, you know, how do you feel about if I go with Alakazam, if that's something that you're cool with, because I know you've got a lot of your own stuff on. He was trying to put more stuff out through Stellar Magic and build his own brand. And Chris was, really good about it. And Chris was like, I actually think Alakazam's a great route for it. Um, and then, yeah, I had chats with Pete and we went from there. But like for me, it had a couple of waves. And to be honest, I don't know. Like, I didn't want to be. I got to a point where I was like, I'm happy to kind of let it have its wings and kind of go now. And I'm so glad I did because it's done the world of good for like I guess for what else I'm bringing to the community. So I can't fault how Alakazam have been. Like they've been absolutely amazing with me. They've done a really good job on the packaging, the product. It's worlds apart from where I was first selling it at lectures. So yeah, there you go, Loki.
which has been a huge success for Alakazam and for yourself.
Yeah,
So, off the back of that, I mean, I know you can't tell me much. I'm not going to tell you to tell me much. But
sure.
before you started rolling with the cameras, you showed me what is probably your next trick, which is
Mm,
a phenomenal idea. And
thank
you're
you.
launching this at the Black Bull Magic Convention, and I can see you
Yes,
doing very, very well.
thank you.
And you've got a lot of collaborators and a lot of people contributing to that project, which is amazing.
Yeah.
That's one thing I always try to do. You look at one of my projects, and I've got other people
Mm,
because I know that I'm not the smartest guy in the room by any stretch of the imagination. So having other people that's just super smart. But you've got to produce this yourself again.
yeah.
Like after your experience with Alakazam, and you said, "Oh, it'd be amazing, and it's better than ever." How come you've kind of gone, okay, well, I'm going to roll up my sleeves and do this again myself now?
I don't know. I think it's just nice to have options. It's, um, from what else so I've got a website which I've kind of started to try and brand as Deceptive Secrets, which is where, essentially you can buy gradient and things like that. And in the future, I'll have more stuff on there. But for this one, it's just I've been working on this a long time, and I'm I'm really passionate about what this is, and I don't know. I've put a lot of time, effort, and energy into it, and I think this is for me. This is the perfect candidate for me to self-produce it again. That's not to say I'm not wanting to wholesale it. Like I think initially I'll probably launch it at Blackpool. People can get it from me, and then we'll kind of just see where it goes then from that point. But yeah, I've a few people that do know about it. I've had a few people collaborate on the project, and like honestly, I'm super thankful and for the people that have come forward and some of the ideas that people have offered. It's just blowing me away, and it's becoming my favorite things to do with the thing that I've come up with. So it's,
That's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah, yeah.
So, so here's a question. I want to ask you
Mm,
something fancy. For anybody watching this that wants to be a magic creator, and
mm.
they struggle to create magic, have you got any advice for the creative process? And I'm well aware
Yeah.
it could be a 45-minute answer, but I mean, it doesn't, any small nuggets of wisdom that you can give people that can help them become more creative.
Yeah. So I think I think so I can share the things that I do that I think help. Um, so I make notes all the time. You should see my notes file on my phone. Any idea that I have around, and it's interesting because some people say, "Oh, I always start with like an idea of a presentation, or I always start with a method," or like I feel like I do a bit of both. Like genuinely, I think sometimes I see a method, and I think, I would if I was to share that with an audience, I think I'd like to do it in this way. And maybe it looks different. And I used the term before, like a different skin. That's essentially what Loki was. Loki is skinning the diabolical principle and then thinking, what else can I do to add some layers in there? That's what Loki is, right? It's a different skin on something that already it's sitting on the shoulders of giants. That's what Loki is. And some ideas come from that. And I think you get to that point by studying magic, studying things outside of magic, listening to music, studying film. If you want to think about how to put on a performance, maybe your inspiration doesn't necessarily come from inside magic. You might find the inspiration outside of magic. I mentioned an idea to you just before we even started this thing based on like a really old thing, but that was because I just saw something that was like, really old. And I was like, oh, do you remember these things? Like, wouldn't that be an interesting application for this thing? And sometimes it's just sometimes the ideas are garbage, and that's fine. I think you've got to be okay with having like all kinds of ideas, right? And also being open to feedback. I think that's one of the biggest things for me is I have a couple of people that I will bombard with things. Like I've got one friend who's a magician. I won't say who it is, but the amount of videos that go back and forth between me and him on WhatsApp, a lot of those things don't become anything. But it's just sharing this this stream of consciousness around thinking about stuff. I shared with him something earlier today. Something I had based on something saw my son do. I saw my son draw something, and I went, that's interesting. And it's just being open to ideas. And I think don't get hung up on like trying to force creativity. I think thinking about maybe how do you want an audience to feel? What do you want them to go away from the experience having felt, or what is that? Oh, well, I want them to go away feeling a bit more connected to themselves. All right, well, how can we do that? What kind of props might we want to use to do? I think just asking questions is a good one as well. Just asking, how might we do X? Right, let's think about this creatively.
Yeah, that's really, 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 yeah. Because that's one of the big things that people struggle with, inspiration.
Mm.
That's the inspiration is one of the things that it's like, okay, I can create, but like, how am I going? Do you know what I mean? I can create, but where am I going to get that germ of an idea? That's always the thing that people struggle with, isn't it?
Mm. Yeah, I think it's just being, just having your eyes open and making, like, I know capturing, like, just it might be a passing thought. Make half of the notes in my phone don't make any sense.
Mm.
Genuinely, I read back and think I don't know what that was about. Just, I'll just leave it and see if.
I know how you feel with that. If I don't write something down within 2 seconds, I'm going to forget it completely.
Yeah, but it's actually quite fun to kind of go back through um and I know like some people I know some creators who will not study magic. They won't read other material because they don't want to step on toes and things like this. But I've always tried to consume magic. I'm often reading a magic book and things like that. So even looking back, like I was reading Tom Bleasdale's book that he's just released with 1914. Great book. And there was something in there straight away when I was going, this is like, first of all, like method, this is tremendous. And then
Mm.
I'm already thinking, how would I share that with an audience? I'm not looking at it and going like, okay, I'm just going to do what Tom says. I'm thinking, oh, I like that. I think, and also what I'm thinking back to that thing about who are you as a performer? It has to kind of, for me, it has to be authentic with who you are. So it's thinking about how do I update what this is, or change it, or adapt it to suit me, I guess.
That
As
makes
well.
total sense. Is there a particular plot in magic that you want to try and
Mm.
perfect? Like, like for me, it's Akan. I've been looking at the Akan plot my entire career in magic. I'm just obsessed with Akan. Is there a plot for you that you kind of go, I want to come up with the perfect version of that plot?
um, well, I have a thing which will become a thing. Speaking so cryptically, um, I have a an approach to a common plot in magic and mentalism that I will be sharing at some point. So I would probably say that, but I don't really want to say what it is. just in case people go digging and figuring stuff out. So yeah, there is, but actually, if we go back to like my origins in Magic, it's cards, right? Um, and so I don't know if there's a specific plot which I would say is the thing that I'm kind of hooked on. Um, but I really love the idea of uh, dressing things up as games. So we're gonna play a game. We're gonna and I think I've got many thoughts on how you could present certain things as games. And I've not really done much with that stuff yet. And I just mean like old games used to play, like patience games or Snap or whatever it is. Like I was chatting to someone today actually. David Peace, you know David. He's
Yeah.
released some stuff with the 1914, and
Coda is exceptional.
yeah, yeah, and David like mentioned something actually around like an old game, and it was like that was the thing that like fired me up and kind of got me. So there's like I have thoughts around that, but yeah, there's a thing that I've already kind of stepped through and I continue to work on, which will see the light of day hopefully sooner rather than later. But yeah, I don't want to rush things. Like that's the other thing. Like I don't because I am doing this not full time. Like I'm literally working a job. Um, this tends to, although I'm thinking about, I have thoughts throughout the day, obviously, and things, but for the most part, this will be, my kind of downtime in the evenings or at weekends. So I can't really put 7 days a week to this thing. So I have to kind of pace myself a little bit. So
That makes sense.
yeah,
Okay, so let me ask you one more question, which
go for it.
is you've had a very interesting career. And like I say, the last couple of years you've had incredible success. What's next? Like I know you told me about a product that's coming out of Blackpool, which I think is going to be a big hit.
Hmm.
Uh, and I think it's very, very smart. We talked about that briefly. Outside of that, like, do you have goals in terms of companies that you want to work with, tricks that you want to produce, anything else that you want to accomplish, either as a creator or a performer? Basically, Adam, what's on your magical bucket list that you want to achieve?
Oh, um, I guess there's a few things that I've considered. I guess I am very much a someone who approaches things as and when they arrive. I don't believe in chasing hairy audacious goals. I'd rather have a set of micro goals in front of me, right, that I can just chip away at and just continuously improve, and hopefully that'll get me to some nice places, and that's fine. But I think like the things that are really important to me in life is family, is like this. I mate, like magic for me, it's a passion. That's what it is. Am I putting stuff out to the community to survive? Like no, like I'm sharing it because I genuinely think they're good ideas, and I think people can get value from them. Um, do I have some aspirations? Like, yeah, like I think it'd be mega. Like I've said, like for the longest time, I'd love to lecture the Magic Circle at some point. I think that'd be a cool thing to do, and that may happen at some point. There's some conversations starting to happen, which would be cool. That'd be like a full circle moment, like excuse the pun, but it would be because that
Yeah.
was something like I did in very early days, and I would never have in a million years have looked forward and gone, oh, I could do this. Um, so that'd be quite cool. I think. I don't know. Like, there might be a time when it sounds silly, but I'm really not looking that far down the line. There's things I'm working on, and I'm hoping that they are well received by the community. But I've not made any like huge
What
plans.
about what about you as a lecturer? Is there anywhere particularly you'd like to lecture? A lot of people say the Magic Circle or the Blackpool Magic Convention or internationally.
Yeah, so like I mean, obviously Blackpool would be great. I think the Magic Castle would be cool. Like, that's probably there, but the Magic Castle would be cool if I could maybe do that one day. But again, I'm hoping that if I can continue just to provide my thoughts and ideas and offers to the community, that maybe that kind of stuff just falls into place or becomes opportunities. And I would obviously be super grateful at any of that kind of stuff that happens. I think the main thing, like, I'm excited about is, in the next couple of, I've got a lot of thoughts about like shows and performing like a one-man show again, and I'd love to kind of get back out there and kind of maybe perform in a bit more of a parlor setting and kind of do some more of that stuff. But again, there's only so many hours in the day, so that might be where I go a bit quieter on the creative side, and maybe I put some time and effort in just to, like, maybe more of a personal project that I want to share with an audience rather than sharing with the community. So there's a bunch of stuff there as well. I've got a lot of thoughts on that as well. So
That's amazing. That's amazing.
thanks,
I
man.
can tell you're a very ambitious, very driven person, and you've got, like, a really strong work ethic, a proven track record, very, very creative. There's no reason why you can't be a huge name in this industry for decades to come. Right.
Maybe I don't.
Yeah.
Thanks, man. I mean, that means a lot. Like, when people, say things like that, it's, obviously it's nice to hear. Um, yeah, I mean, I'll just keep offering what I can offer, and, you know, see where that takes us, I guess.
Well, how can people support you that have been watching this? That like, if they want to buy something, they can get it directly from your website, right? Can you talk to us
Yeah,
about this?
yeah, for sure. So I've got a website which is deceptive-secrets.co.uk, or deceptive-secrets.co.uk for some of our international viewers there. Um, but yeah, so they can see my stuff on there. I have a Patreon. I have a monthly membership, that I tend to, kind of, like, if I've got what I would previously have considered downloadable content, that tends to be my go-to place for, like, my exclusive routines. And, like, if you see me lecture live, there's a good chance that about half of that is already on the membership. Um, there's a couple of things that are going on Alakazam Unlimited, a couple of my effects.
Excuse me.
Some of that, for example, there's a couple of those that have been on my membership for a little while. So, there are a few people that are kind of on the Patreon, and we've got a bit of a community going there around some of the ideas. And again, people share back, and that's wonderful. So I would say that, I mean, but we'll just see. I mean, if people want to kind of check my stuff out, I'd say Deceptive Secrets is like the go-to place to do it. And then, like, the future stuff that I'm putting out, like this thing at Blackpool, that'll probably be available on my website as well. Maybe just after Blackpool, maybe just before. I don't know. Don't know how I'm doing it yet. We'll see.
Wonderful. And you obviously now, I get a lot of people that watch these videos that live internationally. If
Mm.
somebody orders something off your website, will you ship it anywhere in the world?
Yes, I can do. I do have a postage cost to that. But yeah, I ship internationally as well.
That's brilliant. And if people want to connect with you on social media, Adam, where's the best place to do that?
So, Instagram is probably the go-to. I am on Facebook, so the only reason I have Facebook is to connect with the magic industry. So, like, friends in the magic industry, and peers and things like that, people I'm meeting it. So I have Facebook as Adam Dadswell, so you can search me on there and add me as a friend. But if people want to actually check out, like, stuff that I'm going to be releasing, I've only recently started an Instagram for Deceptive Secrets. So again, that's going to really. I do have a personal Instagram for, like, my performance stuff, where a lot of magicians have followed me on there. But Deceptive Secrets, I'm trying to push people more towards that for the creative side now, because it feels a bit weird putting anything on, my story to say, oh, I'm releasing this thing and I've got potential brides and grooms following me. That's all very weird. So let's not do that. So I'm
Yeah.
trying to get everyone over to, the Deceptive Secrets Instagram. Yeah.
Okay. Deceptive Secrets Instagram. You got the website. We're going to put the links to all of that down below. Adam, I want to
Thanks,
take
man.
you seriously. This was a great interview. I'm blown away with what you achieved in your career, especially over the last few years. And I can't wait to see what's coming up in the future, because obviously you've got big plans. I'm telling people what Adam showed me that he's got coming out of Blackpool. You want to go and check out his booth. You're going to have a booth at the Blackpool first
I
booth
am, yeah. Yeah.
Magic Convention. He's going to be demonstrating that. He's going to be launched officially there It's
Yes.
really, really good. It's like an everyday carry version of
Yeah.
one of the most iconic mentalism plots in all time. So if
Yeah.
that's interesting to you, go check out his stand.
Thank
Um,
you.
but Adam, honestly, this has been a great interview, and I want to say thank you for coming on the channel.
No, I really appreciate you taking the time and asking me to come on, mate. It's been lovely to chat.
More than welcome, dude. You want any guys, I want you to do me a favor. First of all, leave a comment down below, letting Adam know what you thought of the interview, because I'm sure he will read those. Second of all, connect with him on social media. Third of all, go buy all of his stuff from his magic shop. And I'll be back next Saturday with another interview. But remember, mark my words, go and check out Adam's stand at Blackpool, because you will not be disappointed with what you're going to see there. But on behalf of Magic TV, on behalf of everyone watching this, one more time, Adam, thank you very much.
Thank you, mate. Appreciate it.
No problem. Guys, thanks for checking us out. I'll see you again tomorrow. Don't forget, there's a review show special and a Q&A going tomorrow, so make sure you check that out. And I'll be back again next Saturday with another Talk Magic. Until then, my name's Craig. This is Adam Dadswell, and you have been watching Magic TV.